Here's the thing about running. You don't need to run 26.2 miles in order to be healthy. In fact, the scientific consensus is that as little as 50 minutes a week of running gives you all of the cardiovascular and all-cause mortality benefits that running can give you. And yet, many of us, 50 minutes is maybe half of a run or one run out of our week, not the entire amount of running that we're going to do that week. We're out here pushing the limits beyond what is necessary in order to be healthy. And non-runners look at us completely perplexed. This whole situation reminds me of the story of when Diogenes met Alexander the Great. Diogenes was a Greek philosopher known for his radical honesty, rejection of wealth, and of societal norms. I think we all know who Alexander the Great was. He was one of the greatest conquerors of all time. He conquered most of the known world at the time he was alive. When the story goes, when Alexander came upon Diogenes, Diogenes was laying out in the sun. And Alexander came up and said something to the effect of, "I'm the greatest, most powerful man in the world. I can do basically anything for you. So name one thing and I'll do it for you." And Diogenes looked up at him and said, "Okay, take 3 steps to the left. You're blocking my sunlight." Alexander was the embodiment of the insatiable desire for more, and he was the man that he had everything except for contentment. Diogenes was the opposite. He owned nothing yet lacked nothing. The only thing he had was contentment. Diogenes was the embodiment of the idea that if you want to be happy, then desire less. He needed nothing, not even from the most powerful man in the world. It was an encounter between the man who wanted to rule the world and the man who wanted nothing. And so I think about the story and I wonder, who do we look up to? Who is the example here? Do we look at Alexander the Great and his incredible motivation and his ability to achieve tremendous things? Or do we look up to Diogenes and his ability to be happy and content with nothing? Buddhism would align with Diogenes. In Buddhism, the first and second noble truths talk about dukkha, which is dissatisfaction or suffering, and how that arises from tanha. And tanha is the desire to hold on to what is pleasurable, to avoid discomfort, and to resist change. Enlightenment, according to Buddhist thought, would be to completely let go of this craving, to let go of tanha. In Christianity, Jesus taught that where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And Jesus proclaimed that the meek will inherit the world. To me, both the Christian thought and the Buddhist thought both lead to the idea that that happiness is not about getting what you want, but it is about wanting rightly. It's about reorienting your desire from the material to the divine, from the self to the selfless. To me, both of these wisdom traditions condemn the mindset of Alexander the Great. Another philosopher, Socrates, he would walk through the Athenian marketplace, and where a lot of people would see lack and want and desire, Socrates would often remark, "Look at all of this stuff that I do not want." Socrates was realizing the truth that would later be echoed by Diogenes and Buddha, that true wealth is not about having more, but about desiring less. Albert Camus, who was an ardent atheist, he went to visit some monks in a monastery, and upon seeing the joy of the monks, he reflected, what is happiness but the harmony between a man and the life he leads? It is understood that Albert Camus saw the belief in God and things like that to be philosophical suicide. Yet in that moment, he saw the happiness of the monks not as the naive bliss of ignorance or faith, but the quiet strength of acceptance. Maybe Camus saw a little bit of himself in the monks in his philosophical quandary about reconciling himself to the absurdity of life. And I would be remiss at this moment if I did not also mention Taoism and the Taoist concept of Wu Wei, which is effortless action. Action without attachment to outcome. Essentially reconciling our will to the Tao. These wise people and wisdom traditions are all pointing to this strong correlation between a person's desires and their happiness. They're pointing to this idea that Diogenes embodied, that if you aren't happy, then just want less. And I think deep down we all know that there's some truth to that. But it kind of leaves me with the question, can we make ourselves want less? And if we can do that, how far should we take that? Should we all become like Diogenes, laying out in the sun without a care in the world, outside of getting sunlight? If I were to sit in a chair, it was an incredibly comfortable chair, it provided all of my needs, and I could just sit there for the rest of my life completely content and my suffering ended, would that be okay? Or am I somehow avoiding responsibility, avoiding life? Like if I were to see my son, if my son came to me and said, "Dad, I want to sit in a chair for the rest of my life and not suffer," I would have a really hard time with that. And I don't know if that's my cultural conditioning. Is that the American in me? Is that the brainwashed consumer in me that says that he needs to go out and achieve and consume and become something? A lot of this is me just thinking out loud, and I think where I'm coming down on this is that maybe Diogenes was right in eliminating all craving. And when I say craving, it's like an empty craving. But maybe he took it too far by eliminating all desire. And maybe Alexander the Great took it too far the other direction, where desire overtook his entire life and he was never content. And so maybe the real question is, what deserves my attention and my effort? And maybe what that answer is for me is different than someone else, and I need to be okay with that. And so maybe that's where wisdom lies, is trying to find out where we each individually sit in between Alexander and Diogenes. And bringing it back to running, I don't think any of us run just to be healthy. But I also don't think that running is excess. I think we run to know ourselves. I think we run to push ourselves beyond what we think is possible, just to test our limits. And that's not excess, that's just being human. And so maybe the only mistake in all of this would be to live your life based on someone else's answer to the question, what do you want? Maybe the tragedy isn't wanting too much or too little. It's about never discovering what is actually worth wanting. I don't know. I'm not an expert in any of this. This is me just thinking out loud, but I do hope this was interesting or thought-provoking. And if it was, I hope you'll stick around, and I'll catch you in the next video. All right, gear for today. As a reminder, I am not affiliated with any brand. I just share what I run in for fun. So we have an Alter Ego running hat. This hoodie is from Janji. I think that's how you say it. Flip mitts are these half mitten things for my hands. And then these shorts are from 10,000. Stance running socks, Nike Zagama 2s. If you have any questions on the gear, let me know.